Think about the last thing you were absolutely terrified of losing. Your relationship, your job, your health, your money, your peace of mind. You thought about it constantly. You replayed the worst possible outcomes in your mind over and over again. You lay awake at night imagining exactly how it would fall apart. You checked, you worried, you obsessed, and then it happened. And you told yourself it was just bad luck. Just life. Just the way things go. But what if it was not bad luck? What if the very act of fearing it, obsessing over it, playing it out in your mind 1,000 times, was the thing that pulled it into your reality? What if your mind is not just a thinking machine? What if it is a broadcasting tower? And what if the universe is not just listening to what you say out loud, but responding to every signal your mind transmits, whether you want it to or not? This is not a feel-good video about positive thinking. This is a deep, honest, and at times uncomfortable look at one of the most powerful and least understood forces in human existence: the relationship between your fear, your focus, and the reality that forms around you. By the end of this video, you are not going to just understand this concept intellectually. You are going to feel it in your bones. And you are going to know exactly what to do about it. Stay with me, because this one is going to change how you think about your own mind forever. Let us start with the question itself. Can you accidentally manifest something you deeply fear by thinking about it too much? To answer this properly, we have to go to a place that makes both scientists and spiritual teachers slightly uncomfortable. We have to sit right at the intersection of quantum physics, neuroscience, ancient wisdom, and lived human experience. Because here is the thing. The answer is yes. But not in the simplistic way that most people either believe or dismiss. It is not as simple as your thought leaves your head and magically creates a physical event. The mechanism is far more sophisticated than that, and far more frightening when you truly understand it. Let us build this from the ground up. What your mind is actually doing every second of every day. Your brain processes approximately 11 million bits of information per second. Your conscious mind handles about 50 of those bits. The rest, all 10,999,950 bits of it, is being processed below the level of your awareness. Read that again. Your conscious mind, the part you think of as you, the part that is reading these words and forming opinions right now, is handling less than 1/1,000,000th of the total information your brain is working with at any given moment, which raises a very serious question. Who or what is running the other 99.9999%? The answer is your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind does not think in language. It does not think in logic. It does not think in reasons or justifications or good intentions. Your subconscious mind thinks in feelings, images, patterns, and emotional frequencies. And it has one primary directive above all others: to match your outer reality to your inner state. Not to your wishes, not to your prayers, not to what you want consciously. To your dominant emotional state. To the frequency you are vibrating at most consistently. To what your nervous system has been trained to expect. And this is where fear becomes one of the most powerful and most dangerous forces in the universe of your personal reality. The neuroscience of fear and focus. When you experience fear, your brain releases a cascade of chemicals: cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for processing threat, fires intensely. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, creativity, and higher reasoning, gets suppressed. In this state, your entire nervous system is locked onto the object of your fear. Your attention becomes a laser focused exclusively on what you are afraid of. And here is the critical thing that most people do not know about how attention works. Whatever you focus your attention on, your brain begins to build neural pathways toward. The more you focus on something, the more real, the more probable, the more expected it becomes to your nervous system. Neuroscientists call this Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you think a fearful thought about a specific outcome, you are literally constructing a neural superhighway toward that outcome in your brain. You are training your brain to see it everywhere, to interpret neutral events as evidence of it, to make decisions that unconsciously move you closer to it, to filter reality in a way that confirms it is coming. This is not metaphysics yet. This is pure measurable neuroscience, and it is terrifying enough on its own, before we even get to the spiritual dimension. But we are going there, because the spiritual dimension takes this even further. Every major spiritual tradition on this earth has understood the power of the focused mind to shape reality, not as a metaphor, as a literal mechanism of creation. The ancient Egyptians had a concept called Heka. It translates roughly as magic, but what it actually meant was the creative power of focused intention and spoken word to influence physical reality. Heka was not considered supernatural. It was considered the fundamental nature of existence. The universe responds to consciousness. Period. The Vedic tradition of ancient India gave us the concept of sankalpa, which translates as a vow or intention formed in the deepest layers of the mind. The Vedic sages understood that a sankalpa made at the level of deep consciousness had the power to reshape the physical world. They also understood its opposite, that a deeply held fear, planted in the subconscious, had the same creative power as a positive intention. Because the subconscious does not distinguish between what you want and what you fear. It only recognizes what you focus on with emotional intensity. The book of Job in the Bible contains one of the most haunting and overlooked verses in all of Scripture. Job, speaking in the middle of his complete devastation, says these words, "The thing which I greatly feared has come upon me, and that which I was afraid of has come unto me." This was not written as a coincidence. It was written as a spiritual law. The thing he feared most, the thing he obsessed over, the thing he could not stop thinking about, came to pass. The teachers of Buddhism speak extensively about the concept of mental proliferation, what they call papanka, the mind's tendency to take a single fearful thought and expand it, multiply it, build entire worlds of suffering around it. The Buddha taught that most human suffering is not caused by actual events. It is caused by the mind's obsessive elaboration of feared events. And he went further. He taught that this obsessive elaboration does not just cause suffering. It actually draws those experiences toward you by making them the dominant reality of your inner world. Indigenous traditions across every continent speak of the dark twin of prayer. They speak of the power of fear thought to call in what the mind dwells upon. Many traditions have specific practices and ceremonies designed not just to attract good things, but to break the grip of fearful obsession, because they understood that obsessive fear was one of the most potent and dangerous forms of unintentional creation. Most people have heard of the law of attraction, and most people have a shallow or distorted understanding of it. They think it means think positive thoughts and good things will come, or that the universe is like a vending machine that dispenses experiences in exchange for visualization. That understanding is too simple, and it misses the real and deeper principle underneath. The real principle is the law of resonance. Everything in the universe, including your thoughts, your emotions, your body, and your circumstances, is vibrating at a frequency. Physics has confirmed this. At the quantum level, nothing is truly solid. Everything is vibrating energy, including you, including your thoughts. The law of resonance states that frequencies which match tend to attract and amplify each other. Just like two tuning forks in a room, where striking one will cause the other to begin vibrating at the same frequency without touching it. Your dominant emotional frequency, the emotional state you spend the most time in, acts as a resonant signal. And reality, including the people, the events, the opportunities, and the disasters that enter your life, tends to match the frequency you are broadcasting most consistently. Fear is a frequency. Anxiety is a frequency. Dread is a frequency. And when these frequencies become the dominant operating state of your nervous system, you are broadcasting a signal that matches the very experiences you are afraid of, not because the universe is punishing you, not because you are weak or spiritually undeveloped, but because this is simply how the mechanics of consciousness and reality interact. It is as impersonal as gravity. Gravity does not hate you when you fall. It is simply doing what gravity does. The law of resonance is the same. It does not care about your intentions. It only responds to your frequency. And chronic fear is one of the most powerful frequencies a human being can generate. Now let us bring this out of the realm of physics and philosophy and into real human experience. Because the most powerful evidence for this principle is not in laboratories or ancient texts. It is in the patterns of ordinary human lives. The self-fulfilling prophecy. What psychology confirmed. In 1948, a sociologist named Robert Merton formally named and studied what he called the self-fulfilling prophecy. His research demonstrated that a belief about the future even if initially false, could generate behaviors and responses that made that belief come true. His most famous example was bank runs during the 1930s Depression. A bank might be perfectly financially sound, but if enough people believed it was going to fail, they would all withdraw their money at once, causing the very failure they feared. The belief created the reality. This was studied in psychology, documented, measured, written about in academic journals. It is not controversial. It is accepted science. And yet most people walk through their lives completely unconscious of the self-fulfilling prophecies they are running in their own minds every single day. The person who believes they are unlucky in love, they go into every relationship carrying that belief. That belief shapes how they behave, how they communicate, what they tolerate, what they project onto their partner. And predictably, over and over again, their relationships confirm the belief they already held. Not because they were right about themselves, but because the belief generated the behavior that generated the outcome. The person who fears failure in business, they catastrophize at every setback. They pull back at the moment when pushing forward would have made the difference. They unconsciously sabotage opportunities because deep in their nervous system, success feels more dangerous than familiar failure. And so they fail. Not because they were incapable, because the fear was running the show. The person who fears abandonment, they cling so tightly, demand so much reassurance, make their partner feel so suffocated that the partner eventually leaves. And the person says, "See, I knew they would leave." What they do not see is that their fear of abandonment created exactly the conditions that made abandonment inevitable. These are not edge cases. These are the most common patterns in human life, and they are all variations of the same mechanism. Fear focused intensely enough on an outcome begins to build a pathway toward that outcome. The medical evidence. What doctors have documented. The medical community has studied this phenomenon under the name nocebo effect. Most people know the placebo effect, the sugar pill that heals because the patient believes it will heal. The nocebo effect is the dark mirror of this. The nocebo effect is when a patient is told a treatment will cause side effects, and they develop those side effects even when given a completely inert substance. It is when a doctor tells a patient they have 6 months to live, and the patient dies in 6 months, despite the fact that the prognosis was later found to have been incorrect. There are documented cases of patients who were misdiagnosed with terminal cancer, were told they were going to die, began to deteriorate exactly as predicted, and died. When the autopsies were performed, the doctors found that the cancer had been far less advanced than the diagnosis suggested. The disease did not kill them. The believed inevitability of death did. The medical term for this is psychogenic death. Death caused not by disease, but by the mind's absolute conviction that death is coming. The brain, responding to that conviction, begins to shut down the systems necessary to sustain life. If fear can literally kill a human body, what else can it create in a human life? Think about that question very carefully. The pattern in your own life. Now I want to speak directly to you, because somewhere in your life there is a pattern that keeps repeating. A type of relationship that keeps going wrong in the same way. A financial situation that keeps returning no matter how hard you work. A health issue that seems to follow you. A social dynamic where you keep ending up in the same position. Most people look at these patterns and see external causes. Bad luck. Bad people. Bad circumstances. But if the same type of bad luck keeps finding you specifically in the same area of your life over and over again, it is time to stop looking at the external circumstances and start looking at the internal frequency you are broadcasting in that area. What is the one thing in that area of your life that you fear most deeply? What is the scenario you replay in your mind most often? What is the outcome you are most convinced is coming even when things are going well? That fear, that obsessive mental replay, that is your signal. And the universe is receiving it. So how the mechanism actually works. The full picture. Now we need to go deeper, because understanding that fear creates what you fear is one thing. Understanding exactly how that mechanism works at every level, physical, psychological, energetic, and spiritual, is what gives you the power to break it. Level 1. The behavioral layer. This is the layer that is easiest to see and most dismissed because people think it is too obvious to matter. When you fear an outcome, you behave differently. Your body language changes. Your communication changes. The decisions you make change. The opportunities you pursue or avoid change. A person who fears being rejected does not ask. A person who fears failure does not try. A person who fears being controlled does not allow closeness. A person who fears scarcity spends compulsively or hoards desperately. In every case, the fear-driven behavior produces outcomes that confirm and reinforce the fear. And then the person looks at those outcomes as evidence that the fear was justified, locking themselves into a cycle that becomes harder and harder to break with every revolution. This layer alone accounts for a staggering percentage of what people experience as bad luck or a difficult life. It is not the universe being cruel. It is the person's fear-driven behavior patterns producing predictable outcomes that feel external but are internally generated. Level 2. The perceptual layer. This is where it gets more interesting and more unsettling. Your brain does not show you objective reality. Your brain shows you a filtered, edited, constructed version of reality based on what it has been programmed to look for. This filtering system is called the Reticular Activating System, or RAS. The RAS is the mechanism in your brain that decides what from the 11 million bits of incoming information per second gets passed up to your conscious awareness and what gets filtered out as irrelevant. And here is the critical part. The RAS filters based on what you focus on emotionally. Whatever carries strong emotional charge, whether that emotional charge is desire or fear, gets flagged as important, gets passed up, gets noticed. When you buy a red car, you suddenly see red cars everywhere. They were always there, but now your RAS has been programmed to notice them. When you are pregnant, you suddenly see pregnant women and babies everywhere. When you are grieving, you hear songs about loss in every place you go. When you are in financial fear, you notice every price increase, every bill, every story about economic collapse, and almost nothing about abundance or opportunity. Your RAS is shaping your experienced reality based on your dominant emotional focus. And a reality experienced through the lens of fear looks like a world that is constantly confirming your worst expectations, because your brain is literally filtering out the evidence of anything else. You are not seeing reality. You are seeing your fear reflected back at you through the selective filter of your own nervous system. Level 3. The energetic layer. Now we move into territory that makes some people uncomfortable, but stay with me, because the science here is more solid than most people realize. The HeartMath Institute, a legitimate research organization that has spent decades studying the relationship between the heart, the brain, and the electromagnetic field of the human body, has produced some extraordinary findings. The human heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet outside the physical body. This field is not just the result of the heart beating. It carries information, it changes based on emotional state, and it can be measured and detected by other people and even other organisms in your vicinity. When a person is in a state of fear, anxiety, or chronic stress, their heart field becomes erratic, disordered, and incoherent. When a person is in a state of love, gratitude, or genuine peace, their heart field becomes ordered, coherent, and stable. And here is the part that has direct relevance to what we are discussing. Other people unconsciously respond to your electromagnetic field before you say a word, before any behavior is visible, before any intention is expressed. Their nervous systems are reading your field and calibrating their response to you based on what that field is broadcasting. This means that a person broadcasting a field of fear and desperation is literally changing how other people respond to them before the interaction even begins. The job interviewer feels slightly uneasy without knowing why. The romantic partner senses something off before any conversation happens. The business contact pulls back from a deal they cannot explain their reluctance about. Your fear is not invisible. It is broadcasting, and the world is responding to that broadcast. Level 4. The quantum layer. This is where the conversation becomes genuinely extraordinary, and where established science, at its most cutting edge, begins to sound almost indistinguishable from ancient spiritual teaching. Quantum physics has established, beyond reasonable scientific doubt, that at the subatomic level, the act of observation influences the behavior of matter. The famous double-slit experiment demonstrated that particles behave differently when they are being observed than when they are not. The mere act of measuring, of conscious attention being directed at a particle, changes what that particle does. This is not a fringe theory. This is one of the most replicated experiments in the history of physics. It is foundational to quantum mechanics, and it means that consciousness is not a passive observer of reality. Consciousness participates in the construction of reality. Now apply that to fear. When you obsessively focus your consciousness on a feared outcome, you are not passively waiting for something to happen. You are actively directing your observational consciousness, your most fundamental creative force, at that specific outcome. You are collapsing possibility waves in the direction of what you fear. The quantum physicist would say you are influencing the probability distribution of events by the direction and intensity of your conscious attention. The ancient mystic would say you are calling it in. They are describing the same thing. Not all fear operates at the same level of creative power. Some fears are surface level and dissolve quickly. Others are deep, ancient, and extraordinarily potent. Understanding the difference matters enormously. Surface fears, loud but less dangerous. Surface fears are the ones you are fully conscious of. The fear before a presentation, the anxiety before a difficult conversation, the nervousness before a first date. These fears are loud, uncomfortable, and unpleasant. But because they are conscious and temporary, their creative power is relatively limited. You experience the fear, the event happens or does not happen, and the fear dissolves. These fears are uncomfortable, but they are not the ones that are quietly reshaping your life. Core wounds, silent and extraordinarily powerful. The fears that shape lives most dramatically are the ones buried so deep that most people do not even recognize them as fears. They have been there so long, been part of the self for so many years, that they feel like facts rather than fears. I am not lovable. I am not safe. I will always end up alone. People always leave. I will never have enough. Something always goes wrong just when things start going well. I do not deserve good things. Success always gets taken away from me. These are not thoughts people consciously choose to think. They are conclusions the nervous system arrived at in childhood, usually through experiences of abandonment, criticism, neglect, loss, or trauma, and then locked in as operating assumptions about reality. And because they feel like facts rather than fears, they are never questioned. They are never examined. They simply run in the background, shaping every decision, every relationship, every opportunity taken or rejected. A person with the core wound of "I am not lovable" will unconsciously test every relationship to prove that belief correct, will reject people who love them before those people can leave, will choose partners who are unavailable or withholding, will interpret neutral behavior as rejection, and will generate over and over again the experience of not being loved, not because it is true, because the frequency of that core belief is so strong that it shapes everything. A person with the core wound of "there is never enough" will undermine their own financial success at the moment it becomes most possible, will self-sabotage, will find ways to spend, lose, give away, or destroy wealth the moment it accumulates beyond what their nervous system considers safe. These are the fears you need to find. These are the fears doing the most damage. And these are almost never the fears that people are aware of when they start doing inner work. Collective fears. The ones we absorb from the world. There is a third category of fear that almost no one talks about, and that is collective fear. Human beings are not isolated consciousness. We are deeply interconnected. We are influenced by the emotional fields of the people around us, the communities we belong to, and the broader cultural frequencies we swim in every day. Every hour you spend consuming fear-based news media, you are absorbing a fear frequency that was not originally yours. Every conversation with someone who is chronically anxious about the future is downloading their anxiety into your nervous system. Every social media feed, algorithmically optimized to provoke outrage and fear, is tuning your emotional state toward frequencies that serve the engagement metrics of a corporation rather than your actual well-being. The average person in the modern world is marinating in collective fear for hours every day, and then wondering why they cannot stop thinking fearful thoughts, and then wondering why their life seems to keep producing fearful experiences. You cannot broadcast a frequency of peace, abundance, and love while spending 4 hours a day absorbing a broadcast frequency of crisis, scarcity, and threat. What you consume energetically is as important as what you consume physically. You would not pour poison into your body every day and then be confused about why you feel sick. But millions of people pour fear into their consciousness every day, and genuinely cannot understand why their inner world feels toxic. We have established that fear, focused intensely enough over long enough periods, absolutely has the capacity to shape your reality in the direction of what you fear. Not through magic, not through coincidence, through a set of interlocking mechanisms at the behavioral, perceptual, energetic, and quantum levels of your existence. Now, the most important question: how do you break it? And I want to be honest with you here, because the internet is full of quick fixes and manifestation hacks that reduce this to a 5-step process you can complete over a weekend. That is not what this is. Breaking the grip of deep fear on your consciousness is real work. It is some of the most important work a human being can do. And it requires honesty, courage, and consistent practice, but it absolutely can be done. And here is how. Step 1. Identify the real fear, not the surface. Fear. Most people trying to work with fear are working with the wrong level. They are trying to manage their anxiety about money, when the real fear is I am not worthy of abundance. They are working on their relationship anxiety, when the real fear is I will be abandoned, because I am fundamentally not enough. The surface fear is the symptom. The core wound is the cause. You can spend years managing symptoms and never touch the cause. To find your real fear, ask yourself this question. In the area of my life where I experience the most repeated difficulty, what is the worst possible thing that could happen? Not the practical outcome, the emotional meaning of that outcome. What would it prove about me? What would it confirm about my worth, my safety, my lovability? The answer to that last question is usually very close to the core wound. Write it down. Say it out loud. Let yourself feel the weight of it. You cannot transform what you refuse to look at directly. Step 2. Understand that your fear is not the truth about you. This step sounds simple. It is not. Your core fears feel like facts. They feel like accurate assessments of who you are and what you deserve. They do not feel like wounds. They feel like reality. But here's the truth. Every core wound was formed in a moment of vulnerability, usually in childhood, when your undeveloped mind interpreted an experience in the most personal and self-blaming way possible. A child who is abandoned does not conclude that their parent had problems. They conclude that they were not good enough to be stayed for. That conclusion was not accurate. It was the best a child's mind could do with a painful experience, but it became lodged in the nervous system as truth, and it has been generating evidence of its truth ever since. The wound is real. The conclusion the wound arrived at is not. You are not unlovable. You are not unsafe. You are not destined for scarcity. You arrived at those conclusions through pain, and you can arrive at different ones through healing. Step 3. Interrupt the loop consciously and consistently. Your fearful thought patterns are literally neural pathways. They are grooves worn deep into the architecture of your brain through years of repetition. Changing them requires building new pathways through deliberate and consistent practice. The moment you notice a fearful thought spiraling, the practice is not to suppress it. Suppressed fear does not disappear. It goes underground and becomes more powerful. The practice is to notice it consciously, name it without judgment, and deliberately redirect your attention. This is what meditation trains. The ability to notice a thought arising, observe it without being swept away by it, and choose where to place your attention next. Even 5 minutes of this practice daily begins to loosen the grip of automatic fear responses over weeks and months. The key word is consistently. One session does not rewire a nervous system. Consistent practice over time does. Step 4. Change your input diet radically. If you are serious about changing the frequency you broadcast, you must change the frequency you absorb. This means making deliberate and sometimes radical changes to what you consume. It means reducing news consumption to the minimum necessary to stay practically informed and refusing to consume fear-based media as entertainment. It means auditing your social media and asking, does this feed make me feel more alive and capable or more anxious and inadequate? It means choosing who you spend your time with based on the energetic impact of that relationship on your nervous system. And it means deliberately increasing your exposure to what feeds the opposite frequency. Time in nature. Music that lifts your emotional state. Books and content that expand your sense of what is possible. People who remind you of your capability rather than your limitations. Practices like breathwork and movement that regulate your nervous system out of chronic stress states. None of this is luxury. All of it is maintenance on the most important piece of equipment you own, your consciousness. Step 5. Redirect your creative power with the same intensity you gave to fear. Here is the piece that almost everyone misses. The reason fear is so powerful as a creative force is because of the emotional intensity with which people hold it. Fear is felt in the body. It is visceral, it is urgent. It carries enormous energetic charge. Most people trying to counter fear with positive thinking are bringing a quiet, intellectual, slightly unconvinced wish to a fight against a deep, visceral, body-level conviction. And they wonder why the positive thinking does not work. The answer is not to think more positively. The answer is to feel the desired reality as deeply and physically as you felt the feared one. Not to visualize what you want like a daydream, but to inhabit the feeling of what you want as a present reality. To let your body feel the relief of the fear having been unfounded. To let your nervous system experience the emotional reality of the outcome you desire, not as a future hope, but as a present truth. This is what every serious manifestation tradition, from Neville Goddard to Vedic meditation to the teachings of Jesus, has described. Feeling it real. Assuming it done. Inhabiting the end result in consciousness before it appears in physical reality. It works because it operates on the exact same mechanism as fear-based creation, only in reverse. Instead of your nervous system rehearsing catastrophe with emotional intensity, it is rehearsing the desired reality with emotional intensity. And the same biological, perceptual, energetic, and quantum mechanisms that would have moved you toward the feared outcome begin moving you toward the desired one. The creative power of your consciousness does not change, only the direction you point it. Before we close, we need to talk about something that almost no conversation about fear and manifestation includes. And that is this: your fears are not your enemy. I know that sounds strange after everything we have just discussed. We have established that fear, when it becomes chronic and obsessive, can literally create the experiences you dread most. That sounds like something you should eliminate, suppress, and destroy as quickly as possible. But that is not what I am saying. Your fear is information. Your fear is a signal. Your fear is, at its deepest level, love in disguise. Because you can only fear losing what you love. You can only fear failing in what you deeply care about. You can only fear abandonment if connection matters to you. You can only fear poverty if security and freedom matter to you. The presence of fear in any area of your life is pointing directly at something you deeply value, and something that, somewhere in your story, you learned to believe was threatened, scarce, or beyond your reach. When you understand your fear this way, it stops being a monster to be slain. It becomes a messenger to be understood. The question to ask when fear arises is not, how do I get rid of this? The question is, what does this fear love so much that it is willing to consume me to protect it? And then ask, what would I need to believe about myself and about the world for this fear to finally be able to rest? Because at the end of every deep fear is a deep need. And at the end of every deep need is a truth about what your soul came here to experience and to give. Your fear of abandonment points to the depth of your need for genuine connection, and perhaps to a calling toward building or healing or creating community. Your fear of scarcity points to the depth of your desire for freedom and security, and perhaps to a calling toward creating abundance, not just for yourself but for others. Your fear of failure points to the depth of your desire to contribute something meaningful to the world, and perhaps to a calling that is larger than the small, safe version of yourself you have been living as. The fear is not the problem. The fear is the breadcrumb trail. Follow it far enough and you do not find your worst nightmare at the end. You find your greatest purpose. So can you accidentally manifest something you deeply fear by thinking about it too much? Yes. Through your behavior, through your perception, through your electromagnetic field, through the quantum creative power of focused consciousness, through every mechanism available to a human being, chronic fearful focus moves you toward what you fear. But here is the other truth that I need you to carry with you from this video. The same power that has been accidentally creating what you fear can be deliberately directed toward creating what you love. The same intensity of focus, the same depth of emotional charge, the same quantum creative force of your consciousness. All of it can be turned around. All of it can be redirected, not perfectly and not overnight, but consistently and courageously, one thought, one breath, one practice, one moment of choosing differently at a time. You are not a passive recipient of whatever life decides to send your way. You are an active participant in the construction of your reality. You have always been. The only question is whether you are doing it consciously or unconsciously, whether you are creating by design or by default. The moment you understand that your mind is not just a thinking machine but a creative force that is shaping reality around you every second of every day, everything changes. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being a student of your own consciousness. And that shift from victim to student, from default to deliberate, from fear to focused intention, is one of the most profound transformations a human being can make in a single lifetime. It begins with a decision, not a perfect plan, not a guarantee of outcome, just a decision. That from this moment forward, you are going to become more aware of what your mind is broadcasting, more deliberate about what you focus on with emotional intensity, more honest about the fears that have been quietly shaping your life from the shadows. That decision is the beginning of something extraordinary. If this reached you today, if something in this video cracked something open or confirmed something you have always felt to be true but never heard said this directly, share it. Because somewhere in your world there is someone whose life is being shaped right now by a fear they do not even know they are holding. And this video might be the thing that changes that. Subscribe to Truth Frequency AI, because we are just getting started. And the next truth is even deeper than this one.